Okay, and then we're back to kind of the more complex problems. So I've underlined the problem. Here's the line. Everything's on top now. So here's my parentheses. So I circle them as well as the one outside. I circle that. Okay, I put a 1 there on that y. Okay, so I don't have any number factors that don't have their own little circle. It means they're all exponents. So for variables, I have x and y. Just write it once. So here's x, okay? 5, but it needs to be multiplied by 1. 5 times 1 is 5. But then there's another x right here. It's on top of the line, so it's plus. And then negative 6 times 1 would be negative 6. So I do that math. 5 plus negative 6 is negative 1. Okay, so I would circle that. Okay, now let's do the y. Here's y. It's the second. 2 times 1 is 2. And then there's another y that's also on top of the line. And that's plus. And 1 times 1 is 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Now to where we want to be. So that's a negative 3. So that's opposite. And this is positive. So that's stay. So my first factor is opposite. So it's on top now. What's the opposite of top? Bottom. And the negative 1 turns into a positive 1. Now this is stay. It's on top now. It stays on top. Y to the third. Don't move it if it says stay. Okay, you really can't clone either one of these, so it's y to the third over x to the first. Okay, now here, there's the line. Everything's on top of it. So the only number I have circled, not uncircled, is 5. Okay, and there's no parentheses, so I don't need to circle any parentheses. So there will be no multiplying here. So the first 5 is negative 2, negative second power. Then the next 5 is on top, so plus negative 4. You don't need to multiply because there are no parentheses. And then the final 5 is also on top, so that's again a plus and then 8. So on the calculator, we take negative 2 plus negative 4 plus 8, and that's 2. I circle the 5 to the second. Now that's a positive, so that's stay. It's on top of the line now. It stays on top of the line because I want its power to be positive, so it stays. And then I can clone 5 to the seconds. 5 times 5, and that's 25. So 25. You can have an empty bottom. Okay, you don't need to put the 1 there if it's the bottom part that's empty. All right, next problem. I don't have any parentheses, so I don't have to do any multiplication, so I don't need to circle. So I have 4 4s to the 1. Don't multiply. I didn't do any circling. All this stuff's on top. Then there's 2 2s to the 1. And then p's. I have 2 variable p's. The first one's a negative 3. And this other p, it's still on top of the line, isn't it? So that's plus negative 3. Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. Okay, so my factors are 4 to the 1, 2 to the 1, and p to the negative 6. So 4 to the 1 would be to stay. 2 to the 1 would be to stay. And p to the negative 6 would be opposite. Okay, so that stays on the top. This factor stays on the top, but this factor goes to the opposite side. It's on top now. What's the opposite of top? Bottom. Now that makes it into a positive. Okay, so really there's no cloning to do because if I clone a 4 once, it's just 4. If I clone a 2 once, it's just 2, and I really don't clone variables, so I put that where it's at. And these two factors, we need to do the times operation. 4 times 2 is 8. Now, had those been on opposite sides of the line, I would not have done any operating. But okay, here's the line. Everything's on top. There were no parentheses, so there's no multiplying I have to watch. So go find 12 to the 1. Then 4 4s to the 1. This is the only big 5 I have. It's to the 1. Now R's, I have an R here and an R here. So my first R is a 3. But now before I worry about the other R, is it on top or bottom? It's on top, so that would be plus and then -4. Okay. 3 plus -4 is -1. So cross that out and put -1. So R to the -1. M right here is to the 2. Then this other M still on top, so that's addition. That's 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So that 1's positive, so that's a stay. This is positive, that's stay. This is positive, so that's stay. The R was a -1, so that's opposite. So O, P, P. And this M ended up with a positive power of 3, so that's stay. Okay, so stay, it's on top, it stays on top. This is stay, it's on top, it stays on top. This is stay, it's on top, it stays on top. This is opposite, it's on top, the opposite of top is bottom. And we ended up with a -1, but now it's going to be a +1. And this is stay, so it's on top. You keep M on top with the 3rd power. Okay, now I've got 12 to the 1, 4 to the 1, 5 to the 1, M to the 3rd, and R to the 1. So 12 to the 1 would just stay 12. 4 to the 1 would be 4. 5 to the 1 would be 5. M to the 3rd stays because it's a variable. And then R to the 1st stays like it is because it's a variable. And then these 3 big numbers here, the ones that aren't letters, they're on top together, so we need to do the times operation with all 3. So 12 times 4 times 5 gives me 240. So I have 240 times M to the 3rd on the top, R to the 1st on the bottom. Okay, number 5. It's been underlined, everything's on top. There are no parentheses to circle, so we don't have to multiply. So here's 5, it'd be to the 1. And then C, there's 2 of them, so the first one's a -4. And then before I do the other C, is it on top or bottom of the line? Here's the line, it's on top, so we do the adding, -6. So -4 plus -6 is -10. Okay, so my 2 factors, this is positive, so stay. This is negative, so that goes to the opposite. Okay, so stay, 5 to the 1, so it stays on top. This says opposite, so if C's on top, what's the opposite of top? Bottom, so then the -10 can turn into a positive. Okay, then 5 to the 1 would just be 5, and C to the 10th would just be that. If the exponent's 1, you really don't clone it. Okay, then we have 3. Here's 3. Oh, we do have a parentheses here, so we want to circle that and the outside exponent of -4. So anything out of that parentheses, we have to multiply by -4. And everything's on top. So here's 3. 1, but I circled it, so I got to multiply it by -4, and that's -4. Here's n, -6, but we got to take -6 times -4, and that's +24. So here are my 2 factors. This is a negative, so that is opposite. This is a positive, so that is stay. 3's on top, move it to the opposite side, which would be the bottom, and the -4 switches to a 4. This is stay. It stays on the same side of the line, so it stays on top. Okay, I have these 2 factors. N to the 24th can't be cloned, but the 3 can. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and that equals 81. So replace that with 81. Now 3 to the 4th was on bottom, so 81 product goes on bottom. N to the 24th power over 81 is the final answer. Number 7. There's the dividing line. Everything's on top. Okay. So I also have parentheses with a -5 out here. And I have another parentheses with a 6 out there. So we're going to pretty much have to multiply before we write a number down. So there's 2. It's to the 1, but 1 times -5 is -5. Now variable j, there's 2 of them here. First j, 2 times -5 is -10. So write down -10. And your other j, is that on top or bottom? It's on top, so plus. And 7 times 6 is 42. So I take -10 plus 42, and that's 32. Okay, then k. How many k's or variables are there? There's 2. Here's the first one. 4 times -5 is -20. Then my lines here, I'm still on top, so I use the plus. And then -1 times 6 is -6. -20 plus -6 is -26. Okay, so here are my 3 factors. 2 to the -5th, j to the +32nd, and k to the -26. This is an opposite because it's negative. That's a stay because it's positive. And that's a opposite because it's negative. Opposite, it's on top. What's the opposite of top? Bottom. The -5 becomes 5. This is a stay, so it stays where it's at, on top. This is opposite. What's the opposite of top? Bottom. And then you make the -26 to a positive. Okay, so I have these 3 factors here. We can clone the 2 to the 5th. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 32. So 2 to the 5th was on bottom, so the product of 32 is on bottom. Then j to the 32nd stays where it's at, and k to the 26 stays where it's at. Okay, next problem. You don't see a dividing line, so you make one yourself, and you underline the whole problem. So that means everything's on top. So I have a parentheses here with a -1. I have a parentheses here with a +1. So m, there's 2 of them. So I take 1 times -1, that's -1. And the other m now, is it going to be plus or minus? Is the other m on top? Yep, so plus. And 1 times 1 is 1. Now an interesting thing happens. -1 plus 1, 0. So if I ended up with a power of 0, we can eliminate that factor. And now g. I have a g here. 4 times -1 is -4. And my other g's on top. So that's plus. And then 4 times 1 is 4. Another funny thing happens here. -4 plus 4 is 0. So if it's 0, you can eliminate the factor. Well, we don't have any more factors, so the answer to the whole problem is 1. Okay? So if all the exponents come to 0, 1 is the answer. Okay, now here's the dividing line. Now we have some things on bottom. There's no parentheses we have to worry about, though. No multiplying. So 12. 12 is to the 1. Now there's not a parentheses that I circled, so I just write a 1 down. Now let's do 4. 4 is to the 1, so it's a 1. Now x's, there's 2 x's, so the first x would be -1. And then my other x is on bottom, so that would be subtraction, and then 5. So I take -1 minus 5. That's -6. And I'll circle them as soon as I know what the power is. Okay. Now y, I have a 6. Don't have to multiply because there's no parentheses we circled. And then the other y is on bottom, so I minus, and then -1. Now if I'm subtracting, if I know I'm going to minus a negative, that's when I use the negative in the parentheses. 6 minus -1. Now it's going to say it's 7 because if you subtract a negative, you're really adding a 1 to the 6, which is 7. So that's 7. And then z. I have a z here on top. It's to the -3 power. And then my other z's on the bottom, so minus, and that's going to be a positive 5. So if it's just a 5, a positive 5, I don't need the parentheses. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. Okay, so that's positive, so that is stay. That's negative, so that is opposite. That's positive, so that's stay. That's negative, so that's opposite. That's positive, so stay. So the first factor stays. It's on top, it stays on top. The next factor is opposite. It's on top now. What's the opposite of top? Bottom. So the 6 turns positive. That's a stay. It's on top. It stays on top. Opposite. So Z's on top. Well, the opposite of top's bottom, and now the negative 8 switches to a positive 8. And this is stay. It's on bottom now. It stays on the bottom. You not move it to the top. Just because it's positive and it's on bottom, it stays on bottom. Because I want its power positive. Okay, well, there's no cloning to do. 12 to the first would be 12, and then I have a bunch of letters, and then 4 to the first would be 4. Now on top we got to times by y to the 7th, and on bottom we got to multiply by x to the 6th, and multiply by z to the 8th. That's it. 12 and 4 are on opposite sides, so don't do the division operation. Okay, then my next problem. I have a 10. Oh, by the way, here's my dividing line. There are no parentheses, so we don't have to do any multiplying. So 10 would just be its 1 power. M, my first m is to the 6th, and then to get to my other m, I'm on the bottom of the line, so that's minus and just 2. So 6 minus 2 is 4. Again, the parentheses are used if I have a minus and then I know I have a negative. Okay, now n, we have a 3. And the other end's on bottom, so we minus 7. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. So I have 10 to the first, m to the fourth, n to the negative 4. And now 5 would be just to the 1. So that's stay. This is positive, so stay. This is negative, so opposite. So this moves to the other side. Everything else stays on the side it's on, and that's stay. So 10 to the first stays on the top side of the line. M to the fourth stays on the top side of the line. And it's negative, so it switches to the opposite side of the line. So it's on top now. Opposite's bottom. And the negative 4 becomes positive. And then this 5 to the first, it says stay. It's on bottom. It stays on bottom. Because I don't want to move it to the top, then I would have to make its exponent into a negative. I don't like that, okay? So I've got these 4 factors. Well, the 10 to the first would just be 10, and the 5 to the first would be 5. And then the variables on top, you're going to times the m by m to the fourth, which you don't really times it, you just write it. And the 5 you times by n to the fourth. All right, that's really all I have to say on that. If you understood that, you're in good shape.